Hello and welcome to everyone to Chai Chat and Community. First and foremost, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we now call Australia, and on whose lands we now live and work, and on whose lands we have lived and worked on in the past, present, and future. Hi everyone, I'm Anushka. I'm going to be the host for today. So today we're going to be discussing international students and mental health. They say that not all classrooms have four walls, and in 2022 this was a reality for over 600,000 new international students entering Australia for a whole new adventure. While cross-cultural learning and studying abroad can be transformative, it doesn't come without its challenges. And today we're going to be discussing this. So I'm going to actually go around and let everybody introduce themselves. We've got Vinay Nair, Devashri Desai, Suvir. Suvir, I hope I don't butcher your last name. Sujaini? Yeah. And Nathan Lee. So I don't know who wants to start. You can volunteer yourselves or I will pick someone, but maybe just a quick explainer of who you are, what you do. Okay, I'm going to volunteer Vinay. Let's go.
All right. Hi, everyone. Vinay from Melbourne. I've been in Australia for about 20 years. Came out here as an international student, and down the track decided to focus a bit more on my mental health. And now for the past 10, 12 years, I've been working in different aspects of mental health. I'm quite passionate about supporting young people, create a future that aligns with their values and identities, and meaning and purpose in their lives.
Thank you. Love that. Dev, I'm going to pass it over to you next.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me here. This is pretty cool. And we get to talk about mental health and international students, I think. Very important. So I have been an international student, came to Australia in 2017, so about 5.5 years now. Studied in Melbourne, lived in Melbourne, and then moved to Adelaide. So right now I'm in Adelaide. When I came here, one of the things that I wanted to do before I came here, I just wanted to know what life of international students is like, and I had just had so many questions. And when I came here, I was like, why not just record myself and my journey, some of the basic questions, put it on YouTube. So that's how Internash came into existence. And I just kept it's more like problem solution oriented videos. So like everything about international students I've been putting up. And soon in a couple of years, we had 100,000 subscribers. We had like 6 million views. Based on that, we created other online communities of international students, such as like Instagram and now TikTok and everything. So just and then turned that into a media startup, but then we specialize in creating content for international students. And then because we have all these people in our online communities, we have been doing a lot of events. So that's what International does.
Love. I'm going to pass it over to Nathan next, and then Suvir straight after to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anushka. Hey, everyone. My name's Nathan. I'm a recent Bachelor of Commerce graduate from the University of Melbourne. And yeah, one of the reasons why I'm here today is I'm one of the co-founders of Stint, an online community and platform dedicated to helping international students build a career right here in Australia. Our mission at Stint is basically we believe that anyone, regardless of citizenship status, deserves a fair chance at a future working in Australia. And right now, that is simply not the case. So we hope to work with at the intersection of international students, employers, and government to ensure that we treat international students fairly. We give them an opportunity to stay and work in Australia because they're obviously making a big commitment to come to Australia in the first place to study. So I think it's really important that we retain that talent and help, and it'll really just help the Australian economy in general.
Thank you. And Suvir, what about you?
Hello, everyone. My name's Suvir. First, I just want to say I hate that I have to follow you three. But I am a third-year social work student currently studying at UNSW in Sydney. I am currently doing placement for Anushka at Meet Psychology. And yeah, I'm here as an international student. I came in 2022 now. So still only only 1 year that I've been here. But started my degree online in 2021. And after experiencing being an international student through COVID and doing online classes and stuff, I'd love to use kind of my experience to help as many international students as I can in the future.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone. So I'm going to get started with a few questions. And my first one is probably directed more at Dev, Suvir, and Vinay. But I want to hear a little bit about your international student journeys, some of the highlights and some of the challenges. Anyone can go first. Feel free. This is just a conversation, guys.
I think for me, a journey is definitely a good word because it's been a lot of ups and downs. Like I mentioned, my first year was completely online in 2021. And although it felt nice to technically be a part of uni, doing all the classes and everything, still definitely felt very disconnected from everyone. And it was very difficult to kind of find the motivation and like desire to study. I hope my parents aren't watching. But yeah, I think that was definitely a challenge for me, just having that motivation and just trying to build those connections with people that everyone tries to do at university. So yeah, that was definitely a big opening challenge for
me. Amazing. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's not an easy journey. I think for me, one of the challenge was that this was the first time I was living away from my family and in a different environment. I did my schooling and bachelor's, everything in Ahmedabad. Like I never stayed away. And in India, I'm sure, at least I can talk about India. A lot of students who come to Australia back home, they live a little bit of privileged life, and life here is slightly different that at least I wasn't ready for. So that was just different. Also, some of the very basic things is that I studied in like Gujarati medium school, which means we everything like math, science, economics, statistics, everything we studied in Gujarati. So like moving to another country, which is English speaking country, and then having that confidence, or just like even I wasn't familiar with, and a lot of international students are not familiar with even the accent. So just not having that confidence and stuff, I think those things are very common challenges amongst international students. But yeah, I think that's the fun part, right? That is navigating and figuring out. That's why at least I was here, and it's been an interesting journey, and enjoying it.
I love that. Thank you. Vinay, what about you? What was your experience like? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Okay, I worked it out. It is Sunday night, guys. So it's time for it's bedtime. It's bedtime for me. So my experience was as all of you can imagine, I came out here long before social media was rife. So for me, my biggest challenge was trying to find a community, of like-minded individuals who I could learn from and share my experience with. Now was when I came, I clearly remember we kind of gravitated to people who came from from the place where I was coming from, which is Bangalore. So there was 4 of us who came. We kind of took an apartment. We lived together. We ate the same kind of food. We did the similar kind of things. So in that way, there was a lot of familiarity. Where I found the challenge was it was way too familiar for me. It was it was really challenging for me to even notice the difference between if I was living in Bangalore or whether I was living in Australia, because it was I was so comfortable doing all the things that we were doing there. I did not even challenge myself to have any new experiences. Obviously, that that made me feel quite frustrated. So but that did kind of make me question what it is that I was doing with my studies and maybe go down different tracks and routes, which I'm not, which I'm entirely grateful for, because that's, if I hadn't had those experiences, I wouldn't be where I am today. From a highlight perspective, it definitely made me more independent than I ever would have been. I can thankfully look after myself, cook for myself, clean for myself, and take care of myself without much trouble, which would have probably been unlikely if I was still living in India and studying.
That's actually really good insight. I have so many follow-up questions for each of you. I guess you mentioned like I guess social media, Vinay, and I'm curious as to, and like feel free to jump into this, Suvir and Dev, and even Nathan, like from your experience of working with international students, because Stint's an online community, International is an online community. I mean, everything really happens online at the moment. Yet when I mean, and I don't know whether you face this as well, Vinay, but when we see a lot of international student clients, loneliness is still a really big factor, despite the fact that, we're almost connected to people online. Like, do you find that like, where do you feel like that might stem from, or like, what are your thoughts even just on that?
Look, you can click a button and join a group. I'm a member of 50 different groups on Facebook. Do I interact with those groups? That's a different story. It's
Yeah.
one thing, it's one thing being part of a group, and another thing to actually feel comfortable to get support from that. So for me, I think, as an international student, whoever's watching, what they need to be asking themselves is, who is my go-to person here in Australia
Yeah.
who helps me feel safe? Is it, it might be a sporting group, or it might be a Facebook community, or it might be someone that they follow on social media, or it might be their counselor. Now, if they don't have anyone here, if they're relying on someone overseas, back in their home country, that can become challenging, because of time differences, because they may not understand the context of what's happening here. So I think that's the biggest challenge for international students, is that is finding that social support who they can rely on.
Really, that's a really good point. I think you're right. I think it is about the interactions. What are your thoughts on that, guys?
I think Vinay made a really good point, like number of people, number of communities that we are in, that's just so many, right? For example, I would be like in swimming and badminton and then cricket, for example, and, all this bunch of things. Um, that doesn't help us make real connections. People we can talk to, people we can share our things with, what happens. It's more a transactional conversation and transactional relationships. I think, and obviously you guys would know a lot more, being from the mental health background, because you would have talked to people. However, one thing that at least I had noticed was, being with people. For example, a majority of my friends are South Asian, and that is because I just feel comfortable. One of the things that Vinay mentioned, which is like, he's from Bangalore, had a couple of friends from Bangalore, and that was it. I think it's just entry to barrier is a little difficult. For example, I want to make friends with people who are born here. They already have their groups, right? So, for example, if I go back to Ahmedabad and somebody's new in Ahmedabad, I already have my school group, I already have my university group, and I hang out with them, And as a group, we don't really need somebody from, or we don't seek out to add somebody in that group, right? We are like super comfortable, we're like, whatever. And that is the same thing. Like, I am the new, so the onus is, I think, on me. If I want to make more friends, I need to go out more. I need to attend more meetups. Like amazing things that you're doing with the speed friendship thing that is coming up, and stuff like that, right? Like, that is where I would be able to make more friends. I think international students, as an international student, I would tell myself that, number one, I have decided to come to another country. It was my decision, and having the best experience is also in my hand. So what am I going to do for that? And that is when I think I would take more efforts and try and just meet as many people as possible.
That's such an interesting point about already having those established groups. And like, I think it can be really nerve-wracking if you're a new person wanting to enter a new group, but also like if you're a group and like letting a new person in. I had somebody once describe it to me as if they're like, it's like being the new character on a TV show, like a sitcom, and you're entering on season 5 where things are already established and you're like the new person in that. So everyone already knows everyone else and their backstories and they have these things. But, in saying that, being a new addition can still be beneficial. So I think that's really cool. I guess on like that note as well, Suvir, you're still quite a fresh international student, and you did study through COVID, and then I know that you've been involved in a lot of stuff at uni. How are you finding building real connections?
I think when I was listening to you guys talk about it, while I can also relate with some of the things you said, I think it's very important to not judge those friendships straight away if you may feel like they're super transactional, just to kind of give them time a little bit. I think I also had that same thought when I first came here. I was like, oh, everyone's going to be in groups from high school. It's going to be so difficult and so awkward. Me coming from Hong Kong, trying to kind of break into that group a little bit. But I think giving it time opened up a lot for me, because I was surprised with myself at how quickly I was opening up to these people and feeling comfortable around these people. And that's a testament to them, I mean, but I think, yeah, like you said, Anushka, I quickly realized when I came here that I had to kind of put myself out there a little bit, just because I've missed a year of socializing. I was thinking about it the other day, like, it's pretty crazy how you are put in breakout rooms with random people, speak to them for 10 minutes, but then like for a whole year, you may never see them again or hear their voice or speak to them again. So even for me, I remember the first class I had, I could only recognize people's voices, which was, as you can imagine, really awkward and a bit scary. But yeah, I put myself into volunteering at uni, just because I thought it was the kind of the best way to meet new people. And I did that online as well in 2021. And I actually did a podcast with Anushka. That's the first time I met Anushka in 2021. And even through that, it was just, I think it was more the setting in which you were spending time with these people. You guys all had a similar goal. You're all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
You had something to talk about outside of what you were immediately doing. And it was people that I met through those volunteering groups that I was able to, when I first came to Sydney, they were the people who reached out and offered to show me around or offered to grab dinner, that kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like building connections, one, comes with time, and also in some situations you have to be the one to instigate things and start them yourself. As scary as it can be, I realized sometimes if you don't plan anything, no one will. So yeah, putting yourself out there definitely does have its rewards, although it can be very, very scary and intimidating for sure.
Amazing, thanks. Nathan, on the I guess they've mentioned speed printing. Do you want to speak to that a little bit quickly?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can plug the event just quickly. Yeah, we do. I mean,
and why we're doing it.
Yeah, but I do agree with everything that you guys have said. It is really important to present international students those opportunities, and then you're moving the ball from our court to their court. So at the end of the day, it's up to international students how involved they want to be and how out there they want to put themselves. But I think it's just really important to keep organizing these events and keep trying to encourage as many international students as possible to come to these events, because obviously, while there are a lot of online communities that exist, nothing can replicate, in-person human connections. So I think that's why it's so important to have these kind of events. We do have one coming up on Thursday, 30th of March, from 6 to 8:30 p.m. at the Couch International Student Centre in Melbourne, 69 Burke Street. So yeah, it's just a really casual speed framing event. with a lot of fun icebreaker games, food and drinks. So yeah, it's a really good opportunity for international students to grow your support network and also meet other international students who are studying in Melbourne.
Thank you. I have a question for you, actually. As somebody who is not an international student, what encouraged you to want to work in a space with other international students? Like, to be able to, I mean, obviously you've noticed a gap, but where did that come from? Is it because you've got friends who are like, in that back, like who have come from overseas and you've found the challenges, or like, yeah, I'm actually a little bit curious. I've never asked you this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's sort of like my passion for social impact particularly stems from really far back. So my dad was actually a refugee from East Timor. So when he was really young, there was a civil war that broke out, and he and his family of 12 had to flee East Timor, and they spent a couple of years in Indonesia, a couple of years in Portugal, and he arrived in Australia as part of like a refugee program in high school. So obviously it was really challenging for him. He faced a lot of difficulties, and one of them was just not being treated equally because he came to Australia not knowing how to speak English, sort of not knowing anyone. So he faced a lot of challenges, and it was just incredibly tough for me to hear what he had to go through. So when I came to university, I made a lot of friends who were actually international students, and throughout university, you go through periods where everyone's applying for internships and jobs and all that sort of stuff. So I was asking them, oh yeah, how are you going? Have you applied to this place? And they're like, oh no, sorry, this place doesn't hire international students. You have to be a citizen or a PR. And I just kept checking in with them throughout this process, and they kept hearing the same answers from companies saying, yeah, sorry, you're not a citizen, you're not a PR, we don't hire international students. And I even heard something where an employer, quite a really large one as well, said the business case for international students to hire international students isn't strong enough. So for me, this was really hard to hear. These are my friends. I knew how capable they were. We had similar experiences, but for some reason they just weren't even being considered. Like they weren't even getting interviews. It's just like instant rejection after instant rejection. So I think for me, it's just I just felt like I had to do something about it because they just weren't being treated fairly. They weren't being looked at based on their abilities, their skills, themselves as just another student. They were looked at based on where they came from or what their ethnicity was. So I think that was just simply not fair. So that's why I felt like I needed to do something about it.
Yeah. No, it's a really valid point. Does anyone have anything to add to that in terms of your own experiences or the experiences of people around you in terms of work and like it being a challenge to be able to I guess we were at this event recently for Solace, and we were discussing labels and how they impact us in society, and whether if there's culture linguistically diverse, there's being multicultural, there's this, there's that, but also international student came up as one of them. And I'm wondering, do you feel like that there's a bit of a stigma around that, or do you think it can be disadvantageous to some degree in workspaces?
It's a difficult one. I feel like there are just so many misconceptions out there, just predetermined biases that already put international students at a disadvantage. Some of them being like international students lack English proficiency. Well, it's not really true because to even get into an Australian university, they must score at least a proficient level on an English test published by Department of Home Affairs. There's a lot of stuff out there they'll experience cultural barriers at work, which I don't really agree with either. I think that's just an easy out for employers to say they don't want to hire international students, or they don't want to deal with someone who comes from a different background or a different country, because international students, while they're at university, have like 3 years that allows them to adapt to the culture in Australia, integrate into society. So for them, after those 3 years, for employees to be like, okay, no, like you don't know the Australian culture well enough to work here. I think that's just incredibly difficult to take as an international student. And like the final one, I guess from an employment point of view, is like they have limited working rights in Australia, but under certain visas, especially during university breaks, they're not really limited in terms of the number of hours they can work. But even while studying, I think they can do up to 40 hours or 48 hours during university per fortnight, I think. Yeah. So.
Any thoughts or anything to add to that?
Yeah, Vinay, go for it.
Come on, Dave. You finish.
I was just, I think Nathan made pretty valid points. One of the problems that, and I have talked to a couple of employers, so maybe slightly different perspective that I would have is because I graduated, then it was really hard to get a job in 2019. But fortunately, not like COVID hadn't hit yet, so it was still like a lot easier compared to in the times of COVID. So, and then I ended up getting a job as a digital marketing coordinator in like one of the companies in Melbourne. And then when I moved to Adelaide, it was like another issue that was during COVID. And then I did a job for some time here as well. So one thing that I have seen is that just the exposure of a lot of employers is not enough, especially like Melbourne, Sydney. Sure, there is quite a bit exposure, but then if you talk about other cities, it might not be there, and that's why a lot of misconceptions that Nathan listed exists. So but that is from the employer side, right? But the second thing is, for example, and this is something that I realized. I was talking to an employer and they explained this. So, for example, if I am a new international student who have lived all my life in India, I like there is certain way how I present myself. There is a certain way how I talk. There is certain way how I write emails as well, which is very different from how people in Australia interact, write emails, present themselves. And I think that is where the difference is. For example, a lot of, for example, when I came here, for me, wearing like slippers, like thongs, was a very normal thing, right? Because that's like India is so hot, like the temperature is so hot that is what we wear literally everywhere, majority of the country. And when I came here, that's a cultural thing that I don't even realize that people here wear shoes because it's a colder weather. And when you're wearing thongs and you're going outside, it's not like unless it's beach or something, people are like, why are you wearing thongs here, right? Like that is a question they ask. But it's the cultural difference that people don't like, or especially it took me, or maybe it could be just me, but I took a while to understand what are the difference in this cultural things or how I talk. Or I mean, I had asked somebody to, like, I wanted water. Like, there's a very simple example, and so in my head I was like, "Mujhe pani de," because that is how I would say in Hindi, and then I translated it, "Give me water," because that is exact translation. And then in Australia, you ask somebody, "Give me water," they'll be like, "This is so rude. Like, you didn't use can, you didn't use please, you didn't say thank you." In my head, I'm doing nothing wrong. Like nothing. I've just translated what I would say in Hindi. And somebody's like, "Why would you talk to me like that?" I'm like, "What? Do you have a problem in giving me water? Like, what is wrong? Like, there is such this difference." And in my defense, I had zero idea that I was in wrong. But those are cultural things as well. And I'm translating here because I still think in like Hindi or Gujarati, and then I translate in English, and then, so those are some of the things that also translate in employability.
Yeah.
Right. Which is, sometimes I have to, like, I would dress slightly differently or just stuff like that. So I think international students have to work a little bit harder. It's just that extra mile. And you don't have any other option, right? At the end of the day, I always tell myself that wasn't it my choice to go to another country? Like I was like I could wear thongs all my life in India, like not going to like office or anything, obviously, but in general, right? Like I would just hang out like that. I would speak Gujarati forever and I would be happy, but it was my choice to go to another country. So maybe I need to walk an extra mile to learn these things as well and make myself more employable. And that is also like making new friends that would also help me with loneliness or just understanding culture. So I think a lot of those things are tied up as well.
These are also
Over to you.
Your whole thing about like thinking in Hindi and translating in English, like even though I grew up here, I still do that, and I have to take a pause sometimes and say, "Hang on, give me 2 minutes," because I'm like, I don't know how to translate this thing in English to you, and it would be so much easier if you just understood it in another language. The nuances are so true. I always use the example of tea and chai. Here, tea time means dinner, but in my head, tea time means it's chai time at like 5 p.m. So you should be able to drink tea. It's just tiny things.
Yeah,
Tiny things can make a huge difference.
true.
Vinay.
Yeah, that's these are interesting aspects to think about, and I think what Nathan and Dev are touching on here is that there's a lot of underlying nuances that come into play when international students are looking to, whether it's for employment, whether it's to make friendships, whether it's to find a way to integrate into Australian society. And it's so there's a lot of rather than thinking of it as I have to try really hard, what I try and encourage international students is to unlearn their their behavior, their habits that that might have been okay in a certain context, right? And might not be okay now. For example, Dave, I used to live in Brisbane, and in Brisbane, everyone wears thongs all the time, right? And
Right.
it was only after I came to Melbourne I realized, okay, if I wear thongs, I'm gonna freeze my feet. So that's only for the home. So it's it's very much context based. So
Yeah,
unless international students are willing to step outside their comfort zone and try something new, with someone new every single week, I think it becomes really challenging for them to wait until after they finish their studies, because often students think quite linearly. They'll be like, okay, I'm going to focus on my studies for the next 1.5, 2 years, and then think about, okay, what do I need to be employable? I think from the time you step foot, thinking about joining communities where you can constantly be preparing yourself for what might be lying ahead for you. That forward planning is crucial.
Absolutely. I'm wondering as well, because there is a lot of assimilation you have to do as a migrant. And I think that includes whether if you're migrating for work, whether if you're migrating with your family, for studies. There's a lot of assimilation, a lot of acculturation, and trying to, get your head around. And that doesn't happen automatically. And I think for anybody who is watching this, just rest assured that it can sometimes take days, weeks, months, years almost, to be able to assimilate. Sometimes it'll be 20 years and you still can't wrap your head around the fact that tea means tea and not, chai. If you're like me, and it just is stuck in your head still. But, it doesn't mean that you won't eventually get there. I think I have a question though around the assimilation process. I know we put a lot of the onus on the people who are migrating, but I wonder, is there something as employers, and I think that employers can almost do to support with that, even if that means educating themselves around the challenges? Do you think that's something that is needed?
I think Anushka, if you just volunteer someone every time, it's just going to be,
Yeah, it might
I
be.
think that's like perfect. Yeah, it's like, hey, it's you now.
There you go.
I think I think it's not just employers. I think it's a collective effort
Yeah.
from international students, employers, and when I say employers, it's like major companies, small companies, also like and government and other media agencies. For example, let's say Guardian put out more articles of migrants doing amazing work. That is something now more employers know, right? So I think it should be a collective effort, and I think at least International had gotten a chance to do this in some aspect. For example, when we worked with Austrade, that was we had to create content for Australian government and showcasing how international students are working in COVID for Australian community and helping Australian community. And more things like that, when more things like that happen, I think more people get to know that, oh, we didn't know this. We didn't know these many nurses are international. And then their whole perspective changes. So, yeah, I think it should be a collective effort. And yeah.
I
You
really
should
like
try a
this
bit.
point about raising awareness and having resources. I think this is one of the things that I see most frequently, both like in personal life with friends and colleagues, but also with clients as well. It comes out to like you don't know what you don't know. So when the resources are not out there, which is why I think the work that International and the work that Stint does is so amazing, is that you're actually putting resources out there for people who are, before they even enter the country, sometimes they have this resource available. Then, in like Nathan's case with Stint, like when you're looking for employability, there is resources for there. And, there are so many aspects of it, not just employability. Like I know Suvir recently, we've been talking about the fact that there's things like how to navigate transport, how to navigate this or that. Vinay and I were having this conversation the other day that it can be really hard if you don't have a one sort of stop shop for figuring out how to do things, and I think that can be really, it's quite a challenge. On the note of challenges, and I'm going to throw this one over to Suvir and then to Vinay. But how do you feel that the challenges that we've sort of discussed so far, including just, the overall international student experience, how do you feel that impacts mental health?
Ooh, I think from what we've discussed, I think going back to the beginning, just kind of the whole thing about making relationships, finding a community, definitely would impact someone's mental health in terms of loneliness and isolation. I know for me, I will always say the most difficult day I've had since I've come to Australia was the first night. Coming here, coming to a completely new environment, not having anyone. The big one, not having family around, not having family in the same time zone as you, is extremely difficult to deal with and come to terms with. And at the end of the day, you are in that moment by yourself. And that can be extremely detrimental for someone's mental health. And unfortunately, that can impact so many other different parts of your life. It will affect your studies. It will affect your capacity to kind of put yourself out there and give yourself the opportunity to meet new people and just get acclimated as much as you can. So I think, it's very difficult to deal with, knowing that you have all these different things that you need to worry about on top of making new friends, or on top of concentrating on your studies, or on top of financial stress. And I think, Anushka, going back to what you said about having resources out there is so important, because as whether we say good things or bad things about social media, the good thing is that it is accessible to everyone most of the time. And even before I came here, I was watching campus tours for UNSW. It didn't help because the campus is huge, but it did give me that little bit sense of reassurance, and having those resources and knowing where to find those resources and having them so accessible to everyone, I think from my own experience definitely goes a long way and is really helpful.
Yeah, that's a really, really good, those are really, really like good points. And I think it's important. It's very validating, I think, for anybody listening as well, to be able to, who can relate to that experience. Thank you. Vinay, what about you? What do you think is this is a good question that's come up on screen, but can we get to that after I ask Vinay about what are your experiences around mental health, or like how these challenges impact mental health?
Look, I've been thinking about the word mental health for for a long time, and I ask a lot of people. First of all, mental health does not equal mental illness, right?
Yes.
And I think for international students who come with a lot of culture, a lot of social norms that have been instilled in them, religious beliefs, attitudes, behavior, that they've learned previously in their home country. Mental health becomes all about social health as well as emotional health. When that starts to deteriorate, then symptoms start to pop up. It might be poor appetite. It might be, shyness turning towards, feeling isolated and lonely. and then that turning into anger and frustration, or doom scrolling on social media every single day, leading to lack of sleep, and not talking to friends or loved ones about what we're experiencing, and then that resulting in alcohol use, or just, and then alienating more people. That's when it starts to become problematic. So I think, which so it's really crucial for international students especially to start to think about, okay, what am I noticing within myself?
Yeah.
Am I being productive in my day to day? Am I working towards my goals, my dreams, as to why I started out here in the first place? Like Dave said, we need to take ownership of
Yeah.
what it is that we have chosen for ourselves, and then be brave
Yeah.
to ask for support. And it's not a sign of weakness. And I can there's four of us men here talking about mental health, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think
huge.
yeah, women deal with mental health very differently to how men do. And I think it's this is a great example of how we can all just continue to think about what our needs are, without thinking about whether it's acceptable or not acceptable to ask for help.
Absolutely. That's such a valid. These are just, yeah, it's just such great advice. Because I think you guys are right. Look, there are so many different challenges that we go through, and there is a bit of an onus on us to be able to seek out that support. I think it can be difficult to figure out where to seek that support from sometimes, but we'll get to that towards the end. But nonetheless, like acknowledging, you're right. It's not, mental illness does not equal like mental health. It's like it can be a part of your mental health, but going through things like culture shock, your language barriers, study related stress, the homesickness of racial discrimination, if you're facing that, stressful living arrangements, it's a lot of stuff for one person to be dealing with, and like I think when for a lot of international students, they move to another country during a time where they're in between that life transition, so for anybody, even like another university student who's living domestically, it's a big deal to be moving out of home, is finding a new job, going to university, having to be independent all at once. That's a lot of pressure to be taking on, and knowing that it's actually okay for you not to be okay is super important. We really like your point on building confidence earlier, Dev. Can you let us know, because I think it was a question in the comments, how did you build your confidence?
That's a great question. I think this could be me, but I've seen this with a lot of people. I think we build confidence by doing something consistently for a significant period of time, right? And that's how we become better at something. When we become better at something, that's when we realize that, oh, like I really can do this. And that is where confidence comes from. So just for me, for example, I wasn't this confident talking to the camera forever, right? I wasn't. If I didn't know what to speak, when to speak, I would just prepare so much initially. But then when I kept doing that for a significant period of time, then that is something that just became nature. It's like playing a sport. And when you keep playing that, then it becomes your muscle memory. When it becomes your muscle memory, then you're confident about playing that sport. I think that analogy I use for myself in almost everything, whether it's hosting events or making YouTube videos or making Instagram reels or talking to people or going to networking events and making friends. The first time I went to a networking meetup, I still remember this is what I would do. I would enter and then I would see like 50, 70, 100 people. And then I was like, I don't know what to do. So first I would look where the restrooms are, just in case if I need. I was like, I don't know. I don't want to be awkward here. So like I know where to go for a breather. And then I would see where water station or drinking or food thing is, because that is where you can do something and you don't look like you don't stand there awkward. So those are some of the things that I would look first, and then I just wouldn't have the confidence to approach somebody to talk to them, because then I'd be like, why would they talk to me? And then I still am very, very afraid of rejections. Like
Yeah.
very afraid of rejections, right? What if they don't talk to me? What if they don't understand? What if they don't say my name correctly? What if they don't understand my accent? What if all these what ifs And but then, so I would always take my friend with me, who's a lot more confident than I am, because then he would do the heavy lifting, and I'll be like, "Oh, by the way, this is Dev." And I'll say, "Hi." If somebody introduces me, then I'm comfortable, but it's just the first thing I couldn't do. So then I figured out that if I have a friend, that's easier. So that was step one. And then step two, I was like, okay, cool, let me just go alone. And it was a disaster. I didn't talk to anyone. In fact, I went there, I decided where I wanted to sit. I sat there, went, got a beer, sat there, didn't talk to anyone, got up. And I was like, this cannot happen. Like, this should not happen. The whole purpose of going to a networking event was just gone. So that was the first. And then I tried to, next time I went, I was like, talk to two people. And then I would go in the room and I was like, is there a Desi dude here that I can talk to? Because that's like the most comfort zone, right? I was like, this guy that I can talk to, probably like he's Indian, and then I can talk in Hindi. And that was my second level, that now I'm making friends with all these Desi people. And because even like talking to women was a little bit harder, because I was like, what if they reject? And that rejection is like so much harder, right? So I was like, okay, find a guy that you can talk to, because the rejection level is. So that was level 2, and then I was like, okay, cool. I really need to figure out how to make friends, because I'm not doing anything. And then you go to a networking event and there are 3 people talking, but it's okay to just stand there, wait for them to finish, and then introduce yourself, right? That is so okay, and it's awkward at first, but then you do that. So it's the same thing about doing an action consistently for a significant period of time, and that's where you build confidence. So that's how that was my phases of like attending networking events, failing, finally making a friend. And then actually, no joke, some of my really good friends right now, I met them at either some conference or volunteering thing, or some networking event that we met like multiple times, and then we hang out all the time now. We're like, oh, this is so. But yeah, that was my journey of trying to figure out how to make friends and stuff.
I love that. That is so good. I mean, I think it's trial, it's always like you have to keep putting yourself out there and trying. And you're right, the more things that you attend, the more times you're probably going to bump into some of the same people. And eventually I think it's like that, the more time you're spending with somebody, it eventually does lead to building those sort of like valuable connections. And, those connections are important. I actually wanted to ask you a question, Nathan, around community. So why do you think a sense of community, and we have sort of touched on this a little bit, but why do you think a sense of community is actually really important for international students? And also, like, how are you finding that on an online space with like Stint at the moment? Are you getting the engagement you want, or is that sort of why you're heading towards having more in-person spaces? And I know we've kind of touched on this, but yeah, I'm curious.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can give a bit of context as to why we started Stint's community in the first place, what it does, and why it's important. But yeah, I guess like the prospect of building a career in Australia as an international student is really difficult. I think some stats, only 34% of Australian workplaces hire international graduates. Only 16% of international students stay on in Australia after their studies end. So, I thought it would be really important to bring international students together so that we can, support each other throughout, the journey, as well as, share resources, tips, and, help each other build our own network. So that's sort of why we created our online community, which is housed on Slack. It's sort of an ecosystem for current international students, former international students, recruiters, founders, hiring managers. We have a migration agent in there as well. So, sort of trying to centralize all the different pieces of an international student's life into sort of one place. And yeah, like I think this is really important because, it's really important to surround yourself with people who genuinely understand your situation, because for so long, international students have been provided really generalized support from universities or from other sort of institutions out there. I know that's like, why UMED exists as well. But there's just a lot of stuff that's not specific for international students. There's people making decisions or just talking and trying to give advice, not from someone who doesn't understand the journey and someone who hasn't walked that path before. So it's really important to, surround yourself with those kind of people so that you're actually getting support that's helpful. rather than just like sort of generalized support that
Like
can be
little bits and pieces
really
from places. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And beyond that as well, I think having a support system somewhere you can go is really helpful in coping with stressful situations and alleviating, effects of emotional distress, which can come with being an international student. You have financial pressures, educational pressures. You don't have your family with you, so it's really important to also have that sense of belonging as well, because it's incredibly difficult moving to a completely new country, which can be incredibly lonely. So, communities like Stint or Internash can really help eliminate those feelings of loneliness and not knowing where to go to ask questions or find support, or just make friends. And I definitely, if you're an international student watching this, try to put yourself in those communities, and I'm sure you'll receive a lot of support out of it.
Amazing. Absolutely, though. Like, if you're not already following International Stint, please go and do it, because you are going to get a lot out of it. Like, there's such good resources for anyone in this situation. I have one last question, which is I'm going to put it towards Suvir and then maybe towards Vinay. Or actually, you know what, Dev, anyone who wants to answer this, you can. But Suvir, you mentioned earlier about, I hope my parents aren't watching this. I did a panel discussion 2 years ago called Mum and Dad, Can I Tell You? And it was a sort of aimed at international students, and we sort of had an international student on there, myself and 2 other people from different backgrounds, and we sort of had this discussion around how all of these challenges that we sort of discussed today, and if we were to bring in and wrap it up, that it's almost easier to talk to the other people around you and other international students, but a lot of people kind of face difficulties telling their parents the things that they were finding challenging. Do you feel like that's been an experience for you in the recent years? And do you feel like, and why? If so, then why?
I think I only said I hope my parents aren't watching because I talked about neglecting my studies a little bit.
Okay.
Luckily for me, my parents have been really supportive. I mean, growing up in Hong Kong, there is a lot of focus on academic pressure, academic success, that kind of thing. So you can imagine how difficult it must have been for them to hear me grow up and be like, I want to study social work. So yeah, I mean, like I spoke about, my most difficult night was my first night that I was here, and it was actually in that time of distress that I was in. It was actually my mom that I was speaking to, and who helped to kind of calm me down. And I think it's really important because I know Dev kind of talked about just being in your comfort zone and doing things that make you feel comfortable. And we've spoken a lot about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. But I also think it's important to utilize the comfort zone that you've already created in your home country or wherever you come from. Because although I said at the end of the day, you may be alone in certain situations, your parents and the people that you have grown up with your entire life before coming to Australia can be just as important as the new connections that you make. So I feel like for me as an international student, having the support of my parents have been extremely helpful, because they're the people who I can kind of bring myself back to a little bit. I can get on the phone with my mom and be like, Mom, everyone's wearing thongs everywhere, and and there are local coffee shops here as opposed to just a Starbucks on every corner. It just kind of helps to ground myself a little bit and just make myself more comfortable. And they're just kind of people to, although they are far away, to help you experience those things and experience those things with you. So luckily I'm very grateful to have 2 very supportive parents who are happy to listen to me shocked when I tell them all the crazy things that surprise me about Australia every day.
That's so beautiful. I love that so much. Vinay, did you have something to add to that?
What was it you wanted me to comment on again? Sorry. I was so lost in Suvir's story.
Yeah, me too. I was like, oh my god, my heart. That's so sweet. No, just on I guess the international student experience, whether it's from your own perspective or from any clients or anyone that you've supported recently within the community. Do you feel like that sometimes people struggle, like if you struggle to sort of speak about these things back home, some of the challenges that they're going through? And, I know that can be for a range of reasons, not even because their parents are not supportive, but I know that I've had some people who are like, oh, if I start having to tell my parents that I'm struggling with X, Y, Z, then they'll worry about me and I don't want them to worry. Yeah. Has that been a commonality?
Look, I mean, especially if the person who's watching this is a young international student. For me, when I came here as a young person, it was really challenging for me to articulate what I was going through. And if I'm feeling confused myself, it's highly unlikely that I'd go and want to confuse my parents.
Yeah.
But and get them worried as well, right? Because they've for them it's like they're not nearby, so even if I asked them not to worry, it would have been a lot more challenging. So and so I think going back for me as a young person, or for any young person watching, I would say it's okay to not have answers. It's okay to not know exactly why you're feeling how you're feeling or what it is that you're feeling. But it is important, if you have a really great, amazing relationship with your parents, like Suvir has, just share what it is that's going through without thinking about what the consequences might be. Because it's also important for us to have someone on the other side who is not in fix-it mode.
Yeah.
Right? And not want to make things better for us. Because this is a learning journey. This is not just an academic learning journey, but also a personal growth journey for a lot of young people.
It's absolutely so true. Well, on that note, I'm going to go around and ask everyone for their one piece of advice, and also how to find you or your organization as well. I'm going to start off with Vinay, since you're already on not on mute.
Right. Now, look, one piece of advice for anyone listening or watching is that, look, take some form of action tonight or first thing tomorrow morning to reach out to someone and ask them how they're going, or share with them about how you're going, and start small. We all want to do hundreds of different things, but everyone here started by taking one small step. And you can reach out on LinkedIn if you have any questions.
Thank you, Dev.
Awesome. One advice. That was really good advice.
That was really good advice.
Yeah, when I was just thinking, what would I do, or who would I contact? What's that one thing that I would... So I think that call to action really helps. My advice to international students is just don't take a lot of stress. Just enjoy as much as you can. There's just a lot of conversation that we had about mental health and employability and everything. My advice is just, at the end of the day, almost always things will fall in place.
Yeah.
So just have faith and have fun. That's the most important thing. And if you guys want to find Internash, you can just find Internash. Just search Internash on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. And you should be able to join the online communities that we have created. And yeah, that's it.
Thanks, Suvir.
Okay, so keep up with myself. My Instagram is just my name. And I think my one piece of advice for international students, or for anyone who's watching, don't put too much pressure on yourself. If you want to change something, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to happen overnight. So I think just give yourself the time that you need, and don't feel stressed if things do take longer to fix than you might have anticipated.
That's so sweet. I really like that. Nathan, what about you?
Yeah, sure. I think my one piece of advice, I've been getting really philosophical recently, but everything happens for a reason. So rejection is just redirection. So from finding a job point of view, if one employer rejects you, it's just not meant to be with that one employer. There will be another one out there who recognizes you for your skills, and yeah, just being an amazing human rather than looking at you as just an international student. And yeah, you can find Stint by just searching Stint Community on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Our TikTok's quite popular as well. But yeah, if you just search us, you can find us.
Beautiful. And one last piece of advice from me is life begins outside of your comfort zone. So definitely start stepping out. I think echoing Vinay, if aside from reaching out to somebody tomorrow, I would recommend doing something out of your comfort zone this week, or at least in this month. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're not a painter, paint. If you see something that you want to go to that thing, but do something out of your comfort zone. I think, we build up our confidence by doing that, like they've said, and it's a good idea. If you want to find Umeed, you can look us up on Instagram, Facebook. Where are we? YouTube, I think. It's just Umeed Psychology. You can also find us on our website. So we will actually, I'm going to quickly plug this, Umeed Psychology will actually be providing 10 free counselling sessions to international students from April onwards. So if you're interested in that, yay! If you're interested in that, please contact us. Just shoot us through a DM or email us. You can email me directly if you want, anushka@umeedpsychology.com.au. Thank you so much to our guests for being here. You guys were fantastic. And it was just so great to hear all these different perspectives. I reckon on all of the different things that we spoke about today, we could probably do like a deep dive and do an hour on each of those different topics. But hopefully this is helpful to everyone that's watching right now or everyone who will be watching this in the future. Thank you again.
Thanks.